Hey everybody, Brian Von Vier here, back at it again with what was the biggest long con that the DM or players have ever pulled off in a D&D campaign part 2. Back in the local heyday of Camarilla, Vampire the Masquerade, LARP, I had been hearing gripes from several of my friends who are in the LARP about goings-on by some of the other players. With this in mind, I got hold of the creation rules and went about constructing a character. A Ravnos of all things. Think gypsy-type vampire. Main power sets tend to be illusion and shapeshifting. The very first game I was involved with, I arranged to meet with one of the GMs to prepare my introduction to the court. As I did so, I also handed him a note and asked him to sign and date it to mark when he had seen it. I knew this was going to possibly come back and bite me. He did one better, and discreetly got 2 of his fellow GMs to also sign it. One of them demanded to know what I was up to. I told him I'm going to be running a skittish, paranoid illusionist. The very first time I entered and was introduced to the game, several players, included one I did not know, came over to welcome me. The very first thing he did was hypnotize me. Go about my business as usual, but follow his orders and never bring harm to him or one of his servants. One of the GMs marked down the hypnosis on my character sheet. So, I did. I excused myself after a minute or two for the bathroom, then carried on. Everyone knew he had gotten to me first and marked me as his, so I was treated as such. Admittedly, I was also a bit of a novelty as the only Ravnos player in the court. Fast forward a little more than a year, the Venture finally made his move to become the local prince, his dominated minions behind him and his gypsy dancer servant at his side. The prince was taken down in a battle that had huge casualties. I asked for and received the glorious honor of being the one to ostentatiously crown our new prince. It was at this point I slid the dagger into the back of his head. The room went into an uproar. There were screams of, "You can't do that," from poor Master Venture. I reached into my wallet and held up a carefully preserved note. The very first time I walk into court will be an illusion of me. Oh my God. While I am shapeshifted into a raven nearby to maintain interaction. Venture successfully dominated an illusion of L.R. Ravnos. Holy shit! It wasn't D&D, it was a pulp adventure game called Justice Incorporated. But the long con was a doozy. My character was an Indiana Jones type who needed lots of different kinds of physical skills to be the archetypical tough guy academic hero, yada yada. In this game, you could take disadvantages on your character to gain points to spend on skills and characteristics. I had to take a bunch. One of them that was just a throwaway I hadn't even thought through was hunted by Captain Strange's hordes. It just sounded like a pulpy villain who had ample resources and would never deny to dirty his own hands, thrashing you himself. I had a complicated character sheet and didn't think much of it. Oh, the Game Master did. First, we actually started seeing Captain Strange's horde on a regular basis. There were colorful henchmen like Leafy Soru, the French circus trick shooter, Mahmoud, the fez-wearing strongman, and Heronius Fowl, the blackmailer and prisoner. They'd show up in ports, castles, remote airstrips, train cars, and creepy museums just to hassle us. Captain Strange himself would occasionally make an appearance, usually safely ensconced in the cupola of a dirigible, or behind a wall of his minions making droll comments and put-downs. Oh. But we weren't alone, it seemed. There was also a mysterious hero, not played by any of the party members. He was the Midnight Avenger. He wore a mask, a fedora, and a cape. He would show up on a motorcycle with a sidecar that had a .50 caliber machine gun mounted on it, but he only loaded it with blanks. He said it was just to intimidate ruffians, as he didn't want to kill, and did most of his damage with his fists. He showed up at times we really needed the help. True to his word, he never seemed to take a life. Over a 3-year-long campaign, we got clues about the identity of the Midnight Avenger. Dun 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 dun. We occasionally crossed paths with a famous actor, a strapping Errol Flynn type known for adventure and action roles. We started to think it wasn't a coincidence. We never saw the actor and the Midnight Avenger at the same time. Once on a train at the start of the episode, we were talking to the actor, but he went into his cabin just before the Midnight Avenger showed up, and disappeared until after the Avenger was gone. He had some lame excuse about someone having beaten him up and locking him in a closet. We thought he was just using that excuse to explain the bruises the Midnight Avenger must have gotten in the fight. The timing was too convenient. We were pretty sure we figured it out. Over the episodes, other little coincidences like that kept occurring. We smirked. Finally, a couple of players were going off to college and we decided it was time to wrap up the campaign. The GM had us globe hopping to exotic locales all over the world, chasing leads on a really big stolen artifact, which was rumored to have religious, political, and economic significance to millions. In the last episode, we ended up at a 1920s tuxedo ball, chasing Captain Strange himself, who appeared to be the boss villain of the whole campaign. Most of Captain Strange's minions are there, and they are using flappers and dappers as human shields. We're outnumbered, but then bursting in the far double door comes the Midnight Avenger on his motorcycle with sidecar. We take actions according to this new tactical development. Then, all the flappers and dappers pull out guns and train them on my character. The Midnight Avenger jumps up to his machine gun on his sidecar, swivels it around, I'm thinking for suppression fire, and shoots my character. This time, it wasn't loaded with blanks. The whole campaign, for 3 years, was a setup to get my character. The actor had been telling the truth. Somebody really had beaten him up and locked him in a closet. It was Mahmoud, the sometimes fez-wearing strongman who played the part of the Midnight Avenger and framed the actor for it, to slowly, patiently, ever so insidiously set us up. The Midnight Avenger never killed any of Captain Strange's Horde members because, well, you know, good flunkies are hard to find. Captain Strange was a mastermind with an extravagant streak, and this was how the GM decided it manifested. It was a shock of a big reveal. Boy, did it end that campaign. Oh, God, that was good. Not a very long con, just one session, but still so much fun for me as the DM. It was a sci-fi game. I'm already hooked and invested, where the players had just completed their induction into a massive galactic intelligence agency. Their first mission was to track down a gang leader they'd encountered during the last part of their training, joining on an actual agent's missions as interns. Being members of this agency, they had the galaxy's worth of knowledge at their fingertips, so I left it up to them to decide what they were looking for to find the gang leader. One of the players remembered me saying in the previous session, the intern assignment, that the leader had escaped in a special ship, which was just something I'd said in the moment to characterize him a little. Somewhat impressed at his memory, I gave them some information that the ship had been seen outside of a city on a far-off planet. They flew over and started doing what any player would do. Bang on some doors and intimidate people. What is this, police officers in Cleveland? They found some lower-level gang members here, but none of them knew anything. Or at least, none of them cracked. Eventually, they found out that a higher-ranking member had been stationed on this planet as their local leader, and figured that he'd be the most likely to know where the boss was. Only problem was that this member was an artificial intelligence, capable of transferring its consciousness through any kind of electrical circuit, meaning that it could hide pretty much anywhere or even escape the city at any time through the power lines. After a not-so-subtle reminder that they had been granted full, authoritative control of the city, though, they quickly put the whole place under martial lockdown. They closed the power grid and ordered everyone to bring out their service robots. From there, it was a game of chicken. as they slowly went down the line of cleaning bots, blasting them one after the other with their plasma guns until the inhabited one gave in. The AI, in fact, chickened at the last second, so they took him in for questioning. That went about as well as expected. Where's the boss and such? I had them in conversation for a while, going from good cop to bad cop, and eventually managed to break the machine. I don't know where he is. All I know is that he told me to bring a ship here. And then I called the session. Wait, what? I'm confused. Assist me, please. It was not a D&D campaign, but a homebrew. Okay, the world was a watery fantasy world with lots of islands and archipelagos, mangroves, coral reefs, and so on. Iron was somewhat rare. The sky was green and dominated by the home of the gods. The year was short, only 84 days, and ended in 2 days of complete darkness as the pale sun was hidden by the gods. After which there were a few days of violent storms and torrents. Oh, that sounds like my kind of planet. There were 5 races: humans, elf-like Linnesin, otter-like Thradkindi, trolls, and the Hive. The last 2 were not player races. Humans had a Renaissance-like society. Linnesin had a Sengoku Japan-like society. And Thrakind had a Pacific Island-like society. One of the gods, the White Goddess, lived in exile on the world in a castle. There were wizards living in tall towers, and there was an evil secret conspiracy, the Triluminary, trying to get world control. And there were sea dragons, of course. The campaign was about finding and gaining control over the Ring of Power, which could only be controlled by the descendants of an ancient king called Shan. There were also 2 kinds of magic. The regular one, which was not completely unlike the Force in Star Wars, but with a philosophy based on the elements, and that of the wizards, which were making more magic artifacts. After 2 years or thereabouts, they finally found the Ring of Power. It was a tokamak-type nuclear reactor, and that's when it dawned on the players. They had been playing a science fiction world all along, not a fantasy world. The elves were genetically modified humans. Thrakind and the Hive were native species on this world, which was a moon orbiting a gas giant, the home of the gods. The White Goddess was originally from Earth. The wizards were caretakers of the old colony ships, the towers. The trolls were robots, and many of the magic items were technical items. Fire lances were blaster-type weapons, for instance. That's kind of a heck of a loop to pull, and I'm not sure even I could pull that kind of thing off, and I have a vivid imagination, so good job. My wife's character pulled an almost year-long in real-time con on my character, lasting from level 1 to level 8 or 9 or so in the game. Her character had him under her influence for several years in-game. Here's how it happened. My wife had decided to come along to a session with me, but planned on just watching. My DM informed her that D&D is not a spectator sport, and handed her an old character she had lying around as backup. A level 5 pixie. My wife is a bit mischievous, and so the pixie was a perfect fit. Reading over her sheet, she found that she had improved invisibility, which makes all subjects in the radius invisible. It is noted that the spell lasts until it's broken by the user or some outside force, but not by making an attack. Thus, she always remained invisible and did what all of us would do given the situation. Pretended to be a god. She's so nuts. My character, a bugbear fighter by the name of Grum, was her mark. Now, bugbears worship a particularly nasty deity named Skrigret, the god of fear. Since Grum thought his god was talking to him directly, he followed blindly, until the pixie started doing things like telling him he shouldn't drink as much. Grum started to resist and suspect something was wrong, so in her panic, the pixie cast an illusion. The hand of God coming from the clouds to smite its defiant follower. Problem was, she'd forgotten it was a bugbear god, and so she used a human hand instead of the gnarled, clawed hands of a bugbear for the visual. In an instant, the bugbear was free and the pixie exposed. And that is how a pixie almost died. A bugbear became a cleric to atone, and the longest con I've ever seen came to a spectacular end. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Please make sure to leave a like, to slam that subscribe button, and of course, ring the bell. We're almost at 200,000 subscribers as of this video, and I want to see us grow. So leave a comment down below telling us about your longest con. Make it good, make it clean, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.